The sound of fine china breaking echoed through the marble hallway. "Look what you've done, you useless maid!" screamed Ava, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. In front of her, Grace stood frozen, a tall, calm black woman in her mid-30s, wearing a neat uniform, her hands trembling as milk dripped from a shattered teacup. "I'm sorry, ma'am," Grace whispered, her voice low but steady. "Sorry?" Ava laughed cruelly, stepping closer. "You think sorry can clean up your mess? You work in our house. You should remember your place." Her brother Ethan leaned against the wall, smirking. "Come on, Ava, she's just the help." "What do you expect?" Grace didn't respond. Her eyes, deep and calm like still water, looked down, not because she was weak, but because she knew that one wrong word could cost her everything. Then Ava's voice rose again, this time colder. "You broke my mother's cup," she hissed. "That cup cost more than your salary for a month." And before Grace could step back, Ava grabbed Grace's collar, pulling her close. The world seemed to freeze. The guards looked away. The other maid stopped breathing. Grace could feel the young woman's anger burning into her skin, but behind that fury, she saw something else. Fear, insecurity, something Grace had seen too many times in rich people who thought money made them powerful. But what Grace did next, no one expected. She didn't cry. She didn't shout. She just looked Ava in the eyes and said quietly, "Let go of me, before you regret it." The room went silent. Even Ethan's smirk faded. Grace slowly lifted Ava's hand off her collar. Not with force, but with the kind of calm strength that made everyone watching uncomfortable. Ava stepped back, shocked. "You dare talk to me like that?" Grace looked around the room, meeting every eye. "I came here to work, not to be humiliated. You can insult me, but don't ever put your hands on me again." And then she turned, walked away, and left the broken cup on the floor. Everyone stood frozen. No one had ever talked back to the Harrison family like that. That evening, in the servants' quarters, whispers spread like wildfire. "Did you see what Grace did?" one maid whispered. She looked her straight in the eyes. "I swear, Ava almost fainted." Grace sat on the edge of her bed, rubbing her hands. They were rough from years of work, cleaning, scrubbing, serving people who never saw her as human. But tonight, something had changed. She wasn't just a maid. She was a mother, a survivor, and a woman who refused to be broken anymore. A small, worn-out photo sat on her nightstand. Her son, Malik, a 10-year-old boy with the brightest smile you could imagine. He was the reason she worked here. He was the reason she endured it all. Grace whispered to the photo, "Just a little longer, baby. Mama's gonna make things right." The Harrison mansion looked perfect from the outside. White pillars, golden lights, and a driveway long enough for 4 cars. But inside it was chaos wrapped in luxury. Mr. Harrison, the father, was a powerful businessman who spent more time on calls than with his kids. Mrs. Harrison had passed away years ago, and ever since, Ava had become crueler, angrier. To outsiders, the Harrisons were a model family, but Grace knew the truth. She had seen Ava secretly crying in her mother's old room. She had heard Ethan shouting at his father for attention, and she had seen how power had made them prisoners of their own house. Still, none of that excused what Ava had done that morning. The next day, Grace went outside to water the garden. The roses were Mrs. Harrison's favorite, delicate red and hard to keep alive. As Grace bent down, she heard footsteps. Ava again. "I hope you enjoyed your little show yesterday," Ava said coldly. Grace didn't look up. "I was just doing my job." Ava folded her arms. "You embarrassed me in front of everyone. Do you realize who you're talking to?" Grace straightened up, meeting her gaze. "Yes, I do. And maybe it's time you realize who you're talking to. I'm not your punching bag." Ava's eyes widened. No one had ever spoken to her like that. Before she could respond, Mr. Harrison's voice echoed from the balcony. "What's going on here?" Both women turned. He looked down at them, his sharp suit glowing under the sunlight. Grace stayed quiet. Ava immediately started crying. "Dad, she talked back to me. She threatened me!" Mr. Harrison frowned. "Grace, is that true?" Grace looked up, her voice calm but firm. "No, sir. I just asked her to treat me with respect." The air hung heavy. For a long moment, no one said a word. Then Mr. Harrison nodded slowly. "Enough. Both of you, get back to your duties." He turned away, but as he walked inside, Grace noticed something strange in his expression. He wasn't angry. He looked thoughtful. That night, while cleaning the study, Grace overheard a conversation through the half-closed door. Mr. Harrison was talking on the phone. "Yes, I know. The company's losing millions. I'll fix it. Just don't let the board know yet." Grace froze. The Harrisons weren't as powerful as they seemed, and when she stepped back, she accidentally knocked over a stack of papers. The noise made Mr. Harrison open the door. "Grace?" "I'm sorry, sir. I didn't mean to." He waved his hand. "It's fine, come in." He looked tired, older than before. "Grace, you've been with us for 5 years, haven't you?" "Yes, sir." He sighed. "You're the only one who still keeps this place running." She hesitated. "Thank you, sir." Then he added quietly, "Sometimes I wonder what this house would be like if people had your heart." Grace didn't know how to respond. Later that night, Grace went to the kitchen for a glass of water. But as she walked past the living room, she froze. Ava and Ethan were there, whispering, plotting something. "She needs to go," Ava hissed. Ethan smirked. "Don't worry, I've got an idea. Tomorrow she'll regret ever talking back to us." Grace's heart pounded. She quietly stepped away, her mind racing. She didn't know what they were planning, but one thing was clear. Tomorrow, the real war inside the Harrison mansion would begin. And this time, Grace wasn't the one who should be afraid. What do you think Grace will do next? Will she stay silent? Or will she fight back against the people trying to destroy her? The morning sun hit the marble floors like liquid gold. The mansion looked peaceful, but inside, a storm was brewing. Grace moved quietly through the hall, dusting the shelves, her mind replaying last night's whisper. "Tomorrow she'll regret ever talking back to us." Ava's words burned in her ears. She had no idea what they were planning, but she could feel the air, thicker, colder than usual. In the kitchen, she greeted the other maids. "Morning, Grace," one whispered nervously. Grace nodded. "Morning, girls. Keep your heads down today." She didn't want anyone else getting hurt because of her. As she wiped the counter, Ethan walked in, wearing that same smug grin. "Well, look who's still here," he said, picking up an apple from the basket. Grace kept her voice calm. "Good morning, sir." He leaned close. "You think my father likes you? You're just lucky he's busy saving his business. But me and Ava, we don't forget." Grace looked up slowly. "And what exactly are you planning to do, sir?" Ethan smirked. "You'll see. Just don't start crying when it happens." He walked away, tossing the apple to the floor as he left. Grace sighed deeply. Something was coming, and she knew she had to be ready for it. That afternoon, Ava called Grace to clean the guest room upstairs. When Grace entered, the curtains were drawn, the air strangely heavy. On the bed lay a sparkling diamond necklace, one of Mrs. Harrison's old jewels. Grace froze. Everyone in the mansion knew that necklace was worth more than a car. And then she saw the small red light blinking under the shelf. A camera. A trap. Grace's heart began to race. They wanted to frame her. But instead of panicking, she smiled softly. "So this is your game," she whispered. She turned to the necklace, picked it up gently, then walked straight to Mr. Harrison's office. Mr. Harrison looked up from his laptop. "Grace, what is it?" Grace placed the necklace on his desk. "I found this lying on the guest bed, sir. I think someone misplaced it." He frowned, confused. "That's your late wife's necklace, isn't it?" His expression changed. "How did this get out of the safe?" Before he could ask more, the door opened. Ava rushed in, fake tears in her eyes, Ethan behind her holding his phone. "Dad, she stole Mom's necklace? I caught her red-handed," Ava cried. Grace turned to face them calmly. "Oh, really?" she said softly. Ethan lifted his phone. "We even have it on camera." He played the footage, showing Grace picking up the necklace from the bed. Mr. Harrison's face hardened. "Grace, is this true?" Grace didn't flinch. "Yes, sir. I picked it up, but not to steal it. I was bringing it to you." Ava laughed. "Oh, please." "That's the oldest excuse in the book." Grace folded her hands. "If you believe that, ma'am, then check the timestamp. The footage starts halfway, because someone turned it on after placing the necklace there." Ethan's smirk faltered. What are you talking about? Grace took a deep breath. I noticed your small red light under the shelf. The camera you hid wasn't on when I entered. It blinked right after I picked up the necklace. That means someone turned it on from their phone after I walked in. Mr. Harrison turned sharply to Ethan. Is that true? Ethan stuttered. I just wanted to make sure, but before he could finish, Grace added quietly, and sir, there's a mirror on the opposite wall. If you pause the footage and zoom in, you'll see who was standing behind the curtain. Mr. Harrison grabbed the phone and froze as he zoomed in. Behind the curtain, barely visible, was Ava's reflection. The room went silent. Mr. Harrison's voice turned ice cold. Ava, Ethan, care to explain why you were filming your maid in secret? Ava's face went pale. Dad, we were just... Enough! He thundered. For the first time since she had joined the mansion, Grace saw fear, not arrogance, in Ava and Ethan's eyes. Mr. Harrison stood up. You've both embarrassed this family. Do you understand how serious this is? Ethan looked down. Ava tried to cry her way out. She talked back to me, Dad. She disrespected me. Mr. Harrison pointed to the door. And that gives you the right to frame her? To grab her like an animal? Grace's eyes widened slightly. He knew about the collar incident. He turned to Grace. I'm sorry for what they did to you. Truly. Grace shook her head. It's all right, sir. I just wanted to protect my job. He sighed. You've protected much more than that today. You've protected what's left of our family's dignity. That evening, Ava knocked softly on Grace's door. Grace opened it to find her standing there, head low. I came to say sorry, Ava said quietly. I didn't mean for things to go that far. Grace looked at her for a long time. You didn't mean it. But you planned it. Ava's lip trembled. Mom died. Dad doesn't care. And you act like you're stronger than us. Grace sighed. I don't act strong, Ava. I just had to be strong. Life didn't give me another choice. Ava looked at her, and for the first time she saw the human behind the uniform. Grace wasn't just a maid. She was a woman who had been fighting battles Ava couldn't even imagine. Ava whispered, I didn't know you had a son. Grace nodded. You never asked. Silence filled the room. Then Grace said softly, the world won't care about what name you have, Ava, but it will remember what kind of heart you showed. Ava looked away, being ashamed. Just when Grace thought the storm was over, something new began brewing. That night, while everyone slept, Grace went back to the study to return a file she'd borrowed earlier. But she noticed the safe door slightly open. Inside, stacks of documents, one folder marked Harrison Industries Fraud Case. Grace frowned. Fraud? She pulled out one paper, a contract signed by Mr. Harrison himself. Large sums of money transferred to offshore accounts. Her breath caught. The family's empire was built on lies. She stepped back, heart pounding. If anyone found her here, holding this file, she'd be the one accused again. Just then, a voice behind her. Grace? She turned and froze. It was Mr. Harrison, his expression unreadable. And in his eyes, a mix of fear, anger, and desperation. He stepped closer, his voice low. I wish you hadn't seen that. Grace's pulse quickened. Sir, I was just returning the file. Mr. Harrison raised his hand. Grace, listen to me carefully. You have no idea what you've stepped into. She stared at him, confused. What are you talking about? He took a deep breath. If those papers get out, my whole family will go to prison. Grace froze. Then why keep them, sir? Mr. Harrison's eyes darkened. Because I'm not the one running the scam. Before she could ask who, a loud crash echoed from the hallway, Ava screaming for help. Mr. Harrison ran out. Grace followed. And what they saw made their hearts stop. Ava was lying at the bottom of the stairs, blood on her forehead, barely breathing. Grace gasped. Oh my God, Ava! Ethan stood on the top step, frozen, whispering, I didn't mean to push her. What just happened inside the Harrison mansion? Is Ava going to survive, and in what truth is Mr. Harrison hiding? The mansion's golden lights flickered as chaos unfolded inside. Ava lay motionless at the bottom of the stairs, her face pale, blood dripping from a small cut above her eye. Grace dropped to her knees beside her. Ava, can you hear me? Ava's eyelids fluttered, her voice weak. Grace, I slipped. But from the top of the stairs, Ethan stood frozen, shaking. I didn't mean to. She was yelling at me. Mr. Harrison grabbed him by the shoulders. What did you do, Ethan? I swear, Dad, she tripped. I didn't touch her. Grace pressed a towel to Ava's head, whispering, Stay with me, sweetheart. You're gonna be fine. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from heartbreak. Because in that moment, despite everything Ava had done to her, Grace still chose to save her. She looked up at Mr. Harrison. We need to call an ambulance, now. Minutes later, flashing red lights painted the White Mansion walls. Paramedics rushed Ava to the hospital. Ethan followed and Grace stayed behind, cleaning the blood off the marble. The house felt emptier than ever. When Mr. Harrison came back, his face was pale, his hands shaking. She's stable, he said quietly. A concussion, but she'll be all right. Grace let out a breath of relief. Thank God. But then Mr. Harrison looked at her, his eyes heavy. Grace, about what you saw earlier in the study. We need to talk. He walked to the bar and poured himself a drink, his voice low. The company's been under investigation for months. My partner, he's been stealing millions through fake accounts. But the paper trail leads back to me. Grace frowned. You mean someone framed you? Yes, he sighed. And if this gets out, my family's name is finished. I'll lose everything. Grace looked at him with quiet strength. Sir, you can still do the right thing. Tell the truth. He laughed bitterly. Truth doesn't matter in my world, Grace, only power does. She shook her head. Then maybe you're living in the wrong world. He turned to her slowly, eyes full of regret. You know, when I first hired you, I didn't think of you as more than staff. But tonight, you've shown me more humanity than anyone in this house. Grace looked down. I just did what was right. He nodded. That's exactly what scares me. The next morning, Grace was cleaning the dining hall when a police car pulled into the driveway. Two detectives stepped out, showing their badges. Mr. Harrison, one said, we need to ask you some questions about your company's financial records. Ethan, standing by the stairs, turned pale. Dad, did someone report us? Mr. Harrison's eyes shifted toward Grace, but she looked just as surprised as everyone else. I didn't say a word, she said softly. The officer looked around. We have evidence linking these accounts to this address. As they spoke, Ava entered, weak but standing. What's going on? No one answered. Then one detective stepped closer to Grace. Ma'am, we also need to talk to you. Your name appeared in one of the reports. You're listed as a witness to a potential fraud. Grace's eyes widened. What, how? Mr. Harrison interrupted. It's not her fault. She has nothing to do with this. But Grace suddenly remembered something. The file. She had touched it. Her fingerprints. She took a slow breath and said, It's all right, sir. I'll tell them everything I saw. Ava's voice cracked. Grace, don't. Grace turned to her, eyes kind but firm. It's time the truth came out, Ava. Hiding behind lies only makes people weaker. At the police station, Grace gave her statement. She told them about the file, the hidden camera, the setup, everything that had happened inside that house. When she finished, one of the detectives nodded. You've done the right thing. We already suspected your employer's partner. Your testimony just confirms it. Grace looked relieved. So Mr. Harrison? He'll still have to answer questions, the detective said. But you may have just saved his family from going down with that company. Grace sat back in her chair, exhausted. She wasn't sure what she had saved, but she knew she'd done what her conscience demanded. A week later, the Harrison mansion was quieter. No shouting, no tension, just the hum of silence. Ethan had gone to stay with relatives for a while. Mr. Harrison was dealing with lawyers, and Ava. Ava walked into the kitchen where Grace was polishing silverware. Hey, she said softly. Grace looked up, smiling faintly. How's your head? Better, Ava said, touching the bandage. I remember everything. The stairs, the fight, your voice telling me to hold on. Grace chuckled softly. You were lucky. Ava's eyes welled up. No, I was wrong. About you. About everything. She stepped closer. I told the police the truth about what we did. About framing you, grabbing you. You didn't deserve any of it. Grace put the cloth down and looked her in the eye. Thank you, Ava. That means more than you think. Ava smiled weakly. You know, when you said, before you regret it, that day, I thought you were threatening me, but now I get it. Grace tilted her head. What do you mean? Ava took a shaky breath. You weren't warning me about yourself. You were warning me about the kind of person I was becoming. Grace's eyes softened. Maybe, but you still have time to become better. Ava nodded, tears streaming down. 2 days later, Mr. Harrison called a meeting in the living room. Ava stood beside him, nervous. Grace stood quietly near the doorway. He looked at her and said, Grace, there's something I need to say publicly. He cleared his throat. You've shown this family what integrity really looks like. And because of you, we're still standing. He looked at Ava, who nodded tearfully. So, Mr. Harrison continued, if you'll accept it, I'd like to offer you a position far more fitting than the one you have now, as house manager, with full authority over the staff. The other maids gasped. Grace blinked. Sir, I don't know what to say. Say yes, Ava whispered with a smile. Grace finally smiled. Then yes, sir. Thank you. Scene 6, Grace's final moment. Later that night, Grace stood in the garden, the same place where Ava once tried to humiliate her. The roses were blooming again. Her phone buzzed, a message from Malik, her son. Mom, I got my scholarship. We're gonna be okay. Grace's eyes filled with tears. She looked up at the stars and whispered, I told you, baby. Mama always makes things right. The wind brushed through the roses as she smiled. And though no one else saw it, in that quiet moment, the maid who once stood, small and silent, had become the strongest person in the house. Sometimes power isn't about money or titles. It's about the courage to stand for what's right. If Grace's story touched your heart, share this video and remind someone. Even the quietest person in the room can make the loudest change. Subscribe for more emotional stories like this, where courage, truth, and humanity win.